the two politicians, the other two execs are much more experienced politicians than he. Maybe that'll get better. Molinaro's been in office since he was 18. And
he is a very definition of a career politician.
Oh, yeah, and Newhouse, he also
Yeah.
was around for quite a while working for RAC and whatnot. So, and I believe he was a town supervisor for a number of years. And so...
I think some of it has to do with Ryan's training. He's trained to be an Army officer. That's his education, and that's the chain of command.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Good point.
We saw it when we were in the service.
So, tell me about the next year. Do you see any type of movement on solid waste? Do you see? COVID's with us. I think we're probably just going to start getting accustomed to having it around. I just think it's going to be a weaker and weaker and weaker until it becomes a common cold or similar to a common cold. What do you see as the big issue this year?
You want to cover this in a minute?
No, just throw it out and we'll cover it in the future.
I'll tell you what I don't want to see in terms of solid waste. I don't want to see somebody appoint a committee.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I will see. The committee. So you have a bunch of people kicking it down the road. There will be reapportionment, which for the public doesn't matter a lot, if at all, but it matters to the people whose districts are going to be adjusted, and that'll get done this year. Our state legislature will be reapportioned, and that could be a bigger deal because we've got 8 legislators. Only 2 of whom are residents of Ulster County.
Well, they carve up Ulster County. We're like the leftovers.
Exactly.
The other population bases get domiciled legislators, and
Yeah, and that's going on. Hochul's progress will be, I think, will impact us. She's already pouring money into. Senator Hinchy's coffers. We'll see a lot of that.
An assemblywoman, a Democratic assemblywoman from Dutchess and Columbia counties, got $1 million for the Frederick Church estate there, Olana. $1 million for Olana. Wow.
I don't think $1 million goes too far at a lot of
that. They're spreading it around, though. It sounds good.
It's
7 figures.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of that, and then some of this federal money, I think, will be coming out for incumbent Democrats. Delgado, for instance. There'll be some big, $1 million is nothing.
Yeah.
There'll be some big numbers coming out and some big projects. It's called buying votes.
Buying votes. Yeah. Well, I think...
All right, we got Jerry. This is 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah. We need to go to break.
Maxwell. Calling.
Yeah.
Calling Maxwell.
All right, well, Jerry's going to call in soon, and then I've got to do... I do this. 8 o'clock is birthday time.
Yep.
So let's take the break, and then we'll do our birthdays. So you find him, I'll do birthdays. So anyway, it's 8 o'clock, and it's time for our birthdays. Before we go to break,
we're going to break.
Oh, all right, we're going to break. So let's go to break.
We'll come back with birthdays and
announcements.
With Jerry Benjamin, not the cop.
Jerry, not the cop.
Okay.
Benjamin.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM. And also online at mykcr.org.
We are Lions. We bring hope where it's needed. Support causes that matter. change lives, change communities, change the world. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
Hi, this is Winnie from the Rosendale Seniors, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
Okay, we're back, and on the line we do have Jerry Benjamin, but before we get to Jerry, why don't we, you said there's a couple birthdays in there?
Absolutely.
Good.
It's birthday time, so we have no birthday for today, and so there's no winner today, no birthdays, but Saturday, January 8th. Please wish a happy birthday to Linda Katona from your friends at the Friendship Bible Coffee. Well, Lydia, I'm sorry, I said Linda, it's Lydia. Lydia, good morning, happy birthday tomorrow, and you, as the only entry, are the winner of the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse famous cow pie for tomorrow. You may pick that up at 62 O'Neill Street in Kingston. And, of course, that comes to you courtesy of Kingston Community Radio and the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse. And for Sunday, we have, let's see, a happy birthday to Carlton Spurl from your family and friends. Happy birthday, Carlton. That would be January 9th. We also have a happy birthday to Donat Baralt from your friends at People's Place. We hope you enjoy your special day. And the winner of the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse famous cow pie for January 9th is Carlton Spurl. Congratulations, Carlton. You may pick up your cow pie at the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse on 62 O'Neill Street in Kingston. And again, that comes to you courtesy of Kingston Community Radio and the Boyce Dairy Milkhouse. And now that we've gotten the best part of the day out of the way, we've gotten the birthdays, we put those to sleep. Good morning, Dr. Benjamin.
Hello, how are you?
We are well, sir. How are you?
I'm just fine.
Did you get any snow down south?
No snow. It's 53 degrees at the moment outside.
Oh, poor Jerry.
We are extremely, extremely jealous. It's snowing here.
How much snow did you get?
Well, it's still snowing, so we're not sure, but it looks like we're only going to get about 2 to 3 inches, maybe. 24, 25 degrees. Wet snow, though. It's wet, so, not good shoveling snow, good snowman snow. Anyway, congratulations on getting out of town, baby.
It was actually okay. There were lots of people stranded at the airport, but our flights went, so we were good.
Oh yeah, this is not a great time to fly. They've been canceling thousands of flights. I'm gonna get that speaker up here so we can hear you just a bit better. All right, there you go. Now you're closer to us. So listen, this is we talk politics. So, Huey, what do you think? What are we going to hit them with today? We're very interested in your take on things, Jerry. One of the things I was going to ask you about, and I don't know if you have followed this or not, but about a month ago, the county executive declared a state of emergency because of the COVID epidemic. And now he redeclared the state of emergency because his first one was only for 1 month. Declared a new state of emergency. So where does the power of a county executive, because as far as my understanding of the charter, it doesn't speak to the ability to declare a state of emergency, and it also doesn't speak to what a state of emergency entails, what additional emergency powers are given to the executive during a state of emergency. Where did this come from? Did you guys anticipate this when you were doing this charter?
No, I don't believe we addressed that. I would imagine it comes from the municipal home rule law, implementing state law allowing emergency declarations under certain circumstances. That's generally applicable to counties.
Oh, it is.
So that if there's no conflict in law between state law and county law, the state law would prevail. If there's a conflict in law, we'd have to determine which law would prevail. I haven't researched this, so I can't be specific, unfortunately. But that's generally what I think.
Okay, so somewhere.
And then, so there has to be some statutory basis of the capacity to declare an emergency, and then that emergency would last. The duration is usually defined and delimited when it has to do with the governor, and as you say, had to be renewed. So by analogy, I would imagine it's similar.
By now, what?
By analogy, in other words, I know that the governor, there's a statutory basis for the declaration of emergency by the executive in the state level. So I imagine at the local level, there's state law. Since there's no charter basis for it, I imagine or suspect there's a state law basis for it, but I have not researched it.
Okay. That's your homework assignment, Jer.
Guess what? Even when I was working, nobody got to do that.
Hey Jerry, do you have any books in the works?
I can't make out what you're saying.
Do you have any books in the works?
No, I've stopped writing books. I write occasional essays. I have one right now that's quite interesting about a state law that was passed and was signed in October by the governor, making charter counties subject to state law and redistricting. And there's a big potential conflict between home rule under the state constitution, Article 9, and this statute. So I'm writing a little essay on that. Mostly it's for I publish it on the Benjamin Center blog, or I offer it to think tanks and others that have blogs that might want to post it.
What are the pros, Jerry? What are the pros and cons here?
Well, the pros and cons are that there'd be uniform standards for. And Ulster County has a very advanced and, I think, fine system of redistricting for the county legislature. So it doesn't improve the situation in every county, but it standardizes and specifies what values have to be considered, and constrains partisan behavior to some degree. So that would be the good side. The bad side is home rule requires that local governments have discretion to govern themselves, and taking away their discretion has to be done with great consideration, very carefully.
Do you take a position on this, Jerry, in this essay?
Initially, I was against it, but the more I think about it, the state concern on this, and in fact, the courts have said that home rule should prevail in the case having to do with Westchester some years ago. But I'm not so sure anymore. I think that in redistricting is such an important local redistricting where it has to be done is such an important matter, and gerrymandering undermines government so much that there might be a state concern. That's the doctrine is called state concern. There might be a state concern basis for the state taking this action and preempting counties. So by doing the research, I went from no to maybe.
Isn't it something like the fox guarding the hen house? I mean, you've got the state, which is legendary gerrymandering for its own legislature, and they're going to be overseeing reapportionment on a local level.
You know what? You're exactly right.
That's the first time you've ever said that to me.
But Huey, I think that has to be in the essay. But if you get a good outcome, you might not want to quarrel with the process as much.
So Jerry, according to this law, if somebody doesn't like the outcome of a redistricting, for instance, for county legislature in Ulster County, they can petition the state to intervene and...
No. They can bring an action as long as they have standing. They have to be a citizen in Ulster County and vote in Ulster County and so on. They could bring an action saying that Ulster County didn't conform to the state law requirements if the law stands. So, for example, the last criterion in the law is that consideration has to be given to the administration of the elections to minimize to assure that elections are efficiently administered. But this gets to be very complex. But the 8 factors you have to consider in redistricting in the state law are rank ordered. Do this one first, this one second, and so on.
Yeah.
The last one has to do with administration. If you take care of administration before you take care of, say, compactness of the district or contiguity of the district, then a lawsuit can ensue and you can have that redistricting undone. With Ulster County, it's extremely hypothetical because Ulster County has a very developed and reformed process for doing this.
I would, I just on, not knowing enough about it, that I can't really make an educated decision, but I actually prefer that the local people take care of their own elections, because they can vote folks out if they don't like the result. I think I agree with you that New York State doesn't exactly have a stellar record on the.
Well, look, we created a phony reform process that doesn't work, and then we've got 2 sets of recommendations on districts from the so-called Reform Commission.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the people now running the state, the party now running the state, has tried to undo the process that we created that we called reform by constitutional amendment before we used it. And the public turned around and said, don't do that. So we have a bad process that the public's defending against the Democrats, who don't want a much better process. They want essentially a partisan process.
Sure.
So we haven't done very well at reforming redistricting, notwithstanding the great 50-year, half-century-long effort of good-willed professors. Taking credit for nothing for bad outcomes. That's what I'm doing.
And it appears, Jerry, that this is going on nationwide. Talk about partisan stuff. You got Merrick Garland filing suit on these voter laws. The Constitution clearly states that states decide how their elections are going to be conducted, and somehow he only manages to sue Republican states. So, I mean, this is such a sham.
Well, the Republican states tend to be shutting down or diminishing access to the ballot, making it harder to vote, and also, in this context, messing around with election administration, or trying to, in a very fraud context where a former administration tried to undo the results of an election. So those states are states where the behavior has occurred, or substantially. And I don't think that it's just a matter of Republican states, by the way. I think it's a general matter. But we also have the Voting Rights Act, which the national government has to make sure is followed, and we also have one person, one vote, which is a constitutional principle established by the Supreme Court that has to be followed. So there's plenty of grounds for review of state election administration.
Do you believe that the main issue with the Voting Rights Act is identification of the voter? Do you think? See, the way, and what I've read, it appears that if there was a provision put in there that people actually had to identify themselves before they voted, that it would have a substantial amount of Republican support, it would pass. The law that's presented there at the moment avoids it almost goes out of its way to avoid having identification of the voter. I mean,
the Voting Rights Act is an act to assure that the racial and language minorities, people who are in racial and language minorities, have access to the ballot and a fair capacity to exercise choice and influence the outcome of elections. That's what the Voting Rights Act is. It's not about it's about access to the ballot. Other elements of the election administration, I'm sure they're subject to other laws in each state. And I identify myself when I vote. I sign in, and so what's the issue of identifying yourself? What state has a problematic practice?
Well, let's just say that in New York State, okay, can you walk into the Board of Elections on the day of the election, tell them that you're Sam Smith, that you live on such and such a street, get an affidavit ballot, and vote?
You can vote, but the counting of that vote is contingent on confirming those facts.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So what is the objection then to what I've heard and seen was that the objection seems to be that did you see Bob Dole's quote when he passed?
You know, a lot of Bob Dole's quotes, but I don't know what.
All right, well, the last one before he died. He's on his deathbed. He said he didn't mind dying because he'd still be able to vote in Chicago.
That's so typical Bob Dole.
Look, there have been. We're getting into a very major issue here. There have been instances of election fraud in American history. The recent allegations of election fraud in the most recent presidential election have, to my knowledge, not been as a massive and consequential set of facts has not been proved. I have seen no evidence that the outcome of the presidential election was the result of election fraud, as has been alleged. And in fact, a lot of the massive, and Mario, you know my political history and so on, my predisposition, but the massive lying that's gone on regarding that election, its outcome, and the processes are the lying is undermining democracy.
Absolutely.
I think our system is at risk to a degree that I have never seen and could not imagine when I was younger.
Yeah.
I don't want to filibuster here, but I used to say, who knows what I remember is what I did, but
I know your feeling.
I used to say to the classes in American government, the elementary class, look, everybody thinks we're such a solid political system, but we're talking about a political system at that time that's only 200 years old. It's a blink of an eye in human history, and we will be challenged again, as we were in the Civil War and other critical moments, to confirm our commitment to democracy and protect it. And this is a moment where we have to do that, and we are really challenged, really challenged, and I'm afraid that only a small portion of the country understands that.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that.
In that context, Jerry, what do you think of comparisons of January 6th, yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The first anniversary of January 6th, comparisons with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Do you think the January 6th, you just talked about democracy being under siege. Do you think it rises to that level or those levels?
Well, I think, we're talking about substantively and symbolically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Substantively, there wasn't enough hardware, there weren't enough, what would you call insurrectionists to undo the government. We did see hundreds of people breaking into the Capitol, threatening the lives of elected officials, and trying to block the processes of democracy. So in a way, systemically, these events were more consequential than the ones you named, because we knew we had a clarity in Pearl Harbor that we were attacked by an enemy, and we mobilized in a united way to confront the threat, and we succeeded. 9/11, we had a discrete act that attacked us in our homeland by a foreign enemy. But here we had Americans assaulting their capital to undo their government and put in place God knows what, encouraged and supported by the chief executive of the United States, outgoing chief executive.
Yeah.
And for what from my rough recollection, we've had orderly transfer of power and being very committed to that and proud of that till this moment. And don't underestimate it. It's an internal dynamic and not an external threat. And don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate it.
No, that was the behavior of a banana republic.
Well, that's what I'm used to seeing on television. The risings in the streets in countries.
Yeah, it's happening
that I
right.
regard as less developed and less.
Yeah, it's happening in
less
Kazakhstan
democratic.
right now.
Right.
Hey, it happened across this country last summer.
Yeah.
Talk about rising in the streets.
Right. Now, we've had mass demonstrations, in our lifetime and before.
Yeah.
But not. I don't feel or believe the degree or the fact of fundamental challenge to the system, and it's. And look at the polls. Look at the polls on the question of commitment to democracy in the American public. They're frightening. They're frightening.
Absolutely. So we got a couple of questions. So I've got one that I'm very interested in, and I don't know how closely you follow this, but can you offer an opinion on what happened to Letitia James?
What happened to her?
I mean, she was
seems to be fine to me. She seems to be lively and healthy to me.
Yeah, well.
No, besides that, Jerry.
Yeah, she's healthily prosecuting the Trump family, but the question that I have is, she was, practically preordained as the next governor. I was one of the believers.
Yeah, you were promoting her
Yeah.
long before she announced.
The Ulster County Democrats were falling all over themselves. They had a fundraiser. She appeared, and there was an anointing going on. And how did we miss this? That she polled at 22%. And
We didn't miss it. She made a calculation that it was better for her and her career to remain Attorney General, and that there were great opportunities in remaining Attorney General, as you pointed out, politically, given the cases that have been brought and are likely to be brought in the next period of time. And she saw that there were substantial risks in seeking the governorship against the first woman governor in the history of New York, who was incumbent in a broad field. She saw the polls, and she withdrew to fight another day. So there was a political judgment involved. Nothing happened to her. She made, I think, a very smart political judgment. Risk-benefit calculation. And she did it relatively early, so it was not maybe as problematic as if she had waited. So I think she, from a political point of view, I think is completely explicable.
Yeah, do you think there's anybody in the field, and I'm thinking about this Bill de Blasio, a.k.a. de Blasio, has a shot at all? I mean, is this guy in Gaga land? What's going on with him announcing that he's running for governor?
Well, I'll tell you a story.
We'd love to hear one.
The basis of this telling you that is that you can leave the room. Without me noticing, because I'm here and you're there. I was talking to Mario Cuomo one day, years ago, and I made the casual remark that no mayor had ever become governor.
Mm.
And he said, wrong. Mario Cuomo took great pleasure in professors being wrong, and especially if he could point it out. And I said, well, who? And he said, Grover Cleveland.
You were referring to mayors of New York, weren't you?
Wrong city, that's Buffalo.
Yeah, right.
You said, Professor, you didn't say mayor of New York City, you said mayor.
Yeah, yep.
The fact is that no former mayor of New York City has ever been governor. There's a great skepticism in the rest of New York State about making a mayor of New York City governor. Then if you add that de Blasio is the mayor we're talking about, it makes it even more unlikely that he becomes governor. Yeah. Now, when you look at the field, I mean, Swazi might be interesting to some people in any other year, but a white Congress member from Long Island, which is a Republican stronghold lately, or at least a Republican running against an upstate, very rare, by the way. A lot of people are making the point that the governor is a woman. Make the further point that the governor is an upstate politician. When did that last happen? But anyway, let's move away from that. An upstate woman, first woman to be governor, governing a crisis, and if she does it incredibly and well, we'll see the budget, what the budget tells us. We'll see what COVID tells us. She will have a good record. She will have been all over the state. She'll have brought money and projects everywhere because it's not a fiscally constrained moment. And very tough.
She's
very
risen
tough.
to the occasion, would you say?
So far, she's doing very well, in my opinion.
Okay. Interesting. So, the next question, a little closer to home, is in 2022, it is predicted that the Republicans are going to have a banner year in congressional races. Do you have an opinion on the Molinaro-Delgado race? do you think that that's one of the seats that'll flip?
Well, first, let's understand that in interim years in national politics, the president's party usually loses seats in the House. So we're talking about general phenomena and specific phenomena in this election. And the margin is very close. So the prospect of Republicans winning control in one of the two houses is substantial. And that will make national governance even more fraught. So that's a big question by itself. Regarding the specific election, I think the congressman has done exceedingly well. He's got one of the most rural Democrat districts in the country, and he's made sure his priorities reflect the character and nature of the district. And I know his constituency is very enthusiastic. I know Molinaro since he was in high school, and he was a candidate for governor. He's a credible, very credible candidate for that position. And he's the question is what district, how the districts will be defined. It's not settled yet what the congressional district would look like, and these Democrats are situated to give additional advantage to the Democrat in this case. So Molinaro is a serious candidate, but there was a very serious candidate defeated by Delgado. So too close to call. I'm sorry to say I can't do better than that.
Well, just calling it a close race, Jerry, I think it indicates something of the political landscape. I think I would call it not percentage-wise necessarily, but closer. I think it'll be 2 or 3 points in Delgado's favor at this point. Would you comment on what's going on in Washington and how it might affect this race? AKA
well, the president has delivered.
Yeah,
president has delivered on a part of his agenda. There's a predisposition to say he hasn't delivered at all, which is not correct. But he's having great difficulty, as any person who's not unconscious can tell you, in marshaling his majorities or his majority in the Senate, which is not a majority at all, but a tied situation, relying on the vice president's vote to break ties. And he also has had serious problems in foreign policy, withdrawal of troops, and his troubled the relationship with China and Russia. He's been challenged to reestablish trusted relationships with longtime allies. So I think that the national scene will not support enthusiastic backing of Democratic candidates in the hustings. So I think there's an additional problem rising from that. At the same time, it's hard to know how events will unfold to mobilize voters. It's hard to know. It's beyond me to predict that.
What impact do you think this COVID money, which should be coming out mid-year, photo op after photo op of major construction projects that we probably won't see in our lifetime, but nonetheless, with the Democratic candidate cutting the ribbon is going to have, and AKA buying votes, in my opinion, that's got to have. I mean, that to me, that's a considered strategy going forward.
Well, I think the more significant point will be how does COVID affecting our day-to-day lives on Election Day?
Mm-hmm.
If we've spent several fortunes and 2 to 3 years trying to contain COVID, and it's still affecting our daily life, and when we go into a store or try to make a trip or ride public transportation or go visit our family in Charleston, South Carolina, that will be the key factor. The spending connected with COVID will be a lesser factor.
Okay.
Because Americans we're all tired already. Even the most enthusiastic supporters, who include me, in understanding that life, liberty, and property are the purposes of government, and protecting life comes first in that list. So having said that, we're tired. I'm tired of wearing a mask. I'm tired of having to be cautious every time I go outside. Can't go. Well, I'm tired of events being canceled that I'd like to go and see and participate in. I don't like Zoom meetings. Not that I have to go to any anymore. I don't like them.
Nobody asked you.
I don't like teaching remotely, which I don't do. And I don't think that the life experience. I don't like the diminished effectiveness of our schools. I don't like that our kids don't get to have high school as they ought to be experiencing it, or college as they ought to be experiencing. So I understand the necessity and enthusiastically support the interventions. I don't like them. I'm tired of them. And if everybody comes to the election with that attitude, it's going to have consequences.
I think that it's going to be a tough year at the polls, because I hear it just, in talking to folks in my practice and my employees that they go to the gas station and it costs them $60 to $80 to fill up their tank of gas. They're not too happy. And no matter how much, wages have increased, it's being just destroyed by inflation right now. I talked to
Mario. That's extremely important, especially the point about gas. I heard a commentator the other day who actually made sense, and he said, every time you drive down the street and look at the posted price of fuel at a gas station, you're reminded of inflation.
Yeah.
And you're reminded of the direct impact on you. It's like we turned over every billboard to persons who want to bring the attention of ordinary people to how much more things cost. And that's important. That's going to have consequences. I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's just a daily reminder. I was talking to a businessman the other day who had a contract to he had a $1.2 million contract, and he can't get it involves painting something, and he can't get the paint. He needs 800 gallons of paint, and he cannot get it. He did a worldwide search, and he can't get the paint. And the guy's sitting on it.
Mario, I'll tell you this. All he has to do is forget about wanting to have just one color. But go down to the store and buy whatever they got.
I'll pass that on.
Jerry's a consultant now.
All right, folks, we have Dr. Benjamin from New Paltz on the phone, 331-9255. He can take calls. He can take questions if they're not too complicated, because he's getting old. And we don't want...
You ain't kidding. You ain't kidding.
But,
talk slow.
Yeah.
Talk slowly.
Nice, slow questions. But 331-9255, Kingston Community Radio. We're on the phone with Dr. Jerry Benjamin from New Paltz, a educational icon in our community, and we're picking his brain because you Reynolds and I have lost ours. So we need some intelligent conversation, and whenever that happens, we automatically call on Jerry. So Jerry, I have another question I'd like to throw out to you, and that is, I'm always I'm extremely concerned about the 2022 elections. Everybody seems to think that the Republicans are a shoo-in to take over the House and maybe win a seat or two in the Senate. And My actual concern is people having Trump fatigue, and that the negative effect that this man can possibly have on that potential victory, that potential Republican resurgence. Are you feeling that or seeing any of that? But he's challenging rock solid Republican conservatives who voted to impeach him or voted some way that he wasn't happy with, and everything has just become about Trump and not about the country, and I don't know. I'm a little concerned that people are underestimating the Trump effect on this 2022 election. Do you have any thoughts in that regard?
Well, Mario, you're revealing a partisan bias, which is fine, but any negative effect Trump has on the Republican prospects is okay with me. I was a Republican for a long time, and the failure of Republican leadership to stand up to this I don't know how to describe it, this person inclined towards authoritarian government, is, the great Republican heroes for me, John McCain, Bob Dole, those real conservative heroes were maligned and attacked, and the ones in office backed away from confronting this in the party, and I left the party several years ago because of it.
What do you know now, Jerry?
Negative effect. My observation is that he's sticking to his core constituency and actually has been relatively low visibility so far. And I don't know how purposeful that is. He's a dangerous man. He's a dangerous man.
I agree with you. And that's why I'm asking the question, because I just see this guy snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and I think that these Republicans may be underestimating just how badly Trump plays to the voting public.
Well, I think the prediction, the famous quote, "Rumors of my death are premature." I think that the prediction of Democratic presumptive defeat of the Democrats is simply insufficiently supported. I think it's going to be a very contentious election. I think the margins that in the governing bodies that arise from it nationally are going to be minimal, and I think that a closely divided government is not good for America. We can't take a direction under that circumstance in a Congress that's in a country that's so polarized. So people come away from this conversation thinking that Benjamin is worried. Who cares? That'll probably be the conclusion from listening. But I am, in very many ways, very frightened. Very frightened.
Jerry, you are unique in many respects, and one of them is that you're not only an egghead, but you're a practicing politician for a number of years. If you were advising or managing Mark Molinaro's campaign, following Mario's question, how would you advise him to handle the Trump effect, if you want to use that word, the Trump situation in his campaign?
Well, Mark, I've known Mark a long time, but not well. He's always been a sensible center-right politician with an emphasis on the center. But lately he's been moving further to the right, and his approach is to take conservative positions when he can that appeal to core Trump constituency without embracing Trump. And I think that if I were advising him, I would probably suggest that he do that. So I think he's he's taking a path in which he'll try to optimize his broad appeal. But he's running against an incumbent who's worked for 2 years or more than 2 years now, to respond to a diverse constituency across a range of issues. So he's got a very difficult challenge. This is not an easy matter. But I think I also think that Molinaro will command the resources because of his run for governor to be a serious challenger who will give the incumbent a very substantial run.
So, Jerry, does it concern you that, or have you considered the fact that Delgado's last election against a essentially unknown, completely underfunded, hapless candidate only produced the victory of maybe 6 points? Doesn't that raise some eyebrows in Washington? Doesn't that embolden political action committees, which I ran one, but don't you think that it emboldens them to take a harder look at the Molinaro Delgado race and possibly level that playing field?
I think that it's an attractive. I think he's worked very hard to build the constituency from his first election. I think that he's done pretty well at that, but he has a district that's demographically and historically significantly contested. So, and we also know that congressional seats are at most risk, in the first 2 to 3 elections, maybe first 4 elections. If you can get through 2 re-elections, you get increasingly secure. We also know that the New York State Assembly and Senate can help him a lot in how they draw the lines. So I think that, as I said, it's going to be a close race, but he's certainly well equipped to defend the seat and will have some help. He'll also have a lot of help from the Democrat PACs, the liberal and on the liberal side of the equation. So if I had to say today, I'd say that Delgado will win by a narrow margin. But there's a lot of time till election day.
Yeah, I actually think that that Molinaro will beat him, and my reasoning is when I looked at the numbers, when Molinaro ran against Cuomo, he won every county in the district
Except
Ulster. And in Ulster, Delgado won by 19,000 votes, and Cuomo only beat Molinaro by 5,000. So when I do the math, and I say these are people that have already voted for Mark Molinaro throughout the district when he ran for governor, he's got a pretty solid base there. And I know that there's only so much they can do with this district. If they give him more of Dutchess County, the only thing they possibly might be able to do, and it's going to be very difficult, is because he and Delgado live so close that they can't actually move him out of the district without, making it terribly obvious. So I think that if they give him more of Dutchess County, it accrues to Molinaro's advantage. It's virtually impossible to give him less of Dutchess County because he and Delgado live so close together that they would really have to start playing with those lines over there, which may not play well to the.
I understand. I understand completely. But we are talking about an incumbent who's been reinforcing his situation for a long time, who's very popular and who's very talented and capable. And I think your point is well taken that voters have had a chance to vote for Molinaro, who is in a sense a kind of incumbent too, and that's what makes it a close race.
Okay, I'm
Guys,
happy to hear that.
I think I'm going to have to go off the phone pretty soon. Are we okay?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes, and how about the Colin Schmidt race against Maloney? Both of those races, by the way, have the Republican challengers one level below Top Gun, which means they could be, based upon polling, they could be projected into top fundraising priority for a Republican candidate in Washington. You know,
For that election, you watch the Hasidic community.
Pardon?
Take a look at watch the Hasidic community in the Maloney election.
He said, watch the Hasidic community.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good point, Jerry. Didn't they vote 59-1 for Hillary one year?
I know the one guy must have been had a vision problem at the election.
You know, there was a Marie Cinci precedent. You might recall that, Jerry, when he was running against the mayor of Binghamton.
Yeah.
And he carried Woodstock, I think, 59-1 as an example, but there was one person who voted for her. And Marie spent the rest of his life looking for that person. Well, Jerry, if you want to sign off, we can wrap up. We want to thank you for coming on.
Well, I don't want to not meet my obligation, but I have some.
No, it's okay,
Okay,
Jerry.
I have to get up and go.
We really appreciate your coming on,
We certainly
and
do.
we have an open invitation to take advantage of your experience and knowledge at a future date.
I have fun talking to you guys, so
Thank you.
thank you for inviting me.
And it'll be the same honorarium as last time, which is
Which
essentially
is what we get paid.
Say exactly what it's worth.
a verbal thank you.
A warm handshake.
Thanks so much, and listen, enjoy the warm weather.
Thank you. Take care.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thanks for contributing, Jerry. Anyway,
That's a good word for it.
yep, and you know, it's always a delight to speak to him because he's just so knowledgeable, you know, about everything, and his breadth and scope of you know, you and I like to talk politics. We spend half of our life doing that. It's a
Avocation.
yes, and in his case, this man is deeply studied. He really gets into the weeds. He understands it from an academic perspective, which is always great to have. Anyway, so going forward, let's hope this COVID thing can finally run out of gas because it's getting just a little depressing to not be able to do anything. I haven't been in.
I'm starting to think that the numbers are askew a little bit. It's just like you said, we're the only county in the whole state that's on state of emergency.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and the numbers. I mean, I don't know. That's what I was saying. I'm not sure what the state of emergency was intended to do, but
Scare people.
But
Yeah. Scare people.
it's not accomplishing anything.
It sure
because
isn't,
we're
and it's hurting
setting-
business owners too.
We're setting records every day.
Yeah.
With new cases, and New York State's like running 70, 80,000 new cases a day.
I just don't even see that. A lot of people are. A lot of people are vaccinated, and
Well, this happened to a friend of mine. He went to the emergency room because he hurt his finger at work. He's a carpenter. He bangs his finger up or whatever. He goes to the emergency room. The woman says to him, well, okay, you're here. I got to take a COVID test. They take a COVID test. The guy's positive. He didn't have one symptom.
yeah, I don't even.
He's positive, and all of a sudden, they're tracking down every one of his contacts.
We lost 4 lions in between 2020 and end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, 4 lions we lost. None of them had COVID at the time. Family members were all with them. All on their death certificates said they died of COVID-19. One of them is actually fighting the hospital in Hackensack. I don't want to say his name, but he's pissed because his wife. Now his wife had everything under the sun: rheumatoid arthritis, dementia. She was sick from many, many things. She wasn't sick from COVID.
Yeah.
But on her death certificate, it says she died from COVID-19.
Wow.
So it's ridiculous, man. So I don't know if they're trying to do it to scare us, be that as it may. And now I'm reading right here online, you can have all your shots and boosters and everything, take a test, you could have COVID and it might not even come up that you're positive for it. So it's like, it doesn't even make sense.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure how reliable the testing is. I think we're getting a lot of false positives, some false negatives. Look, let's face it, it's especially if it's one of those home test kits.
I haven't taken one of those.
There can be multiple ways that you could screw it up if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
You're dependent on the person who's doing it to be able to follow the instructions.
Right.
And there are 4 or 5 steps that you have. You remember?
Yeah, I took the test.
Yeah, when I was traveling back and forth to Florida from New York, back and forth during the pandemic at its height, I had to take a test to fly back into New York, have a negative test to return into New York. So I was I was doing it in Florida, and nurses and doctors were administering, but they were the rapid test where you could find out, 20 minutes later if you were, positive or negative.
Yep.
I had never taken any other tests but the rapid ones, and obviously I had never tested positive. But anyway, what do you guys got on tap for the weekend?
Well, I'm battling with Genesis of Goshen to try and get my car fixed up so I can.
You guys will be here in 2 weeks?
We'll definitely. It looks like I'm.
God willing.
Yeah, it looks like I'm still going to be here because they're not going to get my car part until the 20th.
Yeah, your car's only got 1,400 miles on it. Why don't you say, hey, I want a new one? I spent all this money on a car.
They don't have a new one.
Oh, they don't have another one.
When we went down there, they were offloading this car, and it was the only one.
The SUV.
An SUV, and was the only one that wasn't spoken for.
Oh God, yeah.
And when I said to the guy, "Can you do anything on the price?" he said to me, "Well, we already did. We're the only dealer that's not charging over sticker." And then they gave me a $500 discount for being a veteran.
Great.
It was nice,
Yeah.
So I got $500 off on a extremely.
But now you got a car you can't drive for a month.
And that was the thing.
Yeah.
They can't get the part. I told them I thought they just should.
I know you're supposed to be sitting in the sun right now drinking a margarita.
Well,
or something to that line of that.
Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be playing a little pickleball.
Yeah, or something.
A little golf.
Mahjong, I don't know.
Yeah, Mahjong. I take.
All right, well, we're out of time. Another great show today, guys. Thank you. We'll be back on Monday with Medical Monday. You two have a great. Everybody, listeners, have a great weekend.
All righty. Thank you.